She knows what she wants tonight. Moves fast like a neon tide. Confidence in every line. She's got style to find.
The Package, Chapter 12. Miles away, cloaked in the growing shadows of dusk, May's tactical team made their move on Senator Albright's estate. The diesel generators hummed, a jarring sound in the silent world, confirming Fitz's earlier detection. 5 sentries on the outer perimeter, May reported, peering through night vision goggles, a surprisingly analog light-amplifying model from the playground's deep storage. All armed with mechanical weapons, no visible comms, but they're using hand signals and whistles. Casey, using his specialized listening device fashioned by Fitz from an old gramophone horn, picked up distant, muffled voices. Sounds like they've got a radio room inside, running on a separate generator. They're broadcasting. Hunter, meanwhile, pointed out what looked like a service entrance, overgrown or possibly camouflaged. If that leads to the auxiliary generator room or power distribution, it might be their Achilles heel. "Fitz, you're with Hunter," May commanded, her voice a low whisper. "The rest of us will continue to the main compound. Use that entrance to get a read on their power generation. The rest of us will proceed with the infiltration." Fitz nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. Hunter led the way, his movements fluid and silent as he cut through the undergrowth, a ghost in the growing twilight. Fitz, to Hunter's surprise, was surprisingly nimble and quiet, a trait he clearly honed from years of sneaking around labs after hours. They found the entrance, and Hunter slipped inside, holding the brush aside for Fitz. The air was thick with the scent of diesel and ozone, and the hum of the generators was deafening. Fitz pulled out a device of his own making, a portable, handheld sensor with a few glowing lights. He moved around the room, his eyes watching the readout as it fluctuated wildly. "What is it, Fitz?" he whispered, keeping a watchful eye on the door. "The power consumption. It's off the charts," Fitz said, his voice barely audible over the hum. "The generators are running at almost full capacity, but they're not powering the camp. They're just feeding something in the main building, is my guess. The energy output is too high for just a command center." He paused, his face pale. "It's like it's 100 times more powerful than they need. The power is being routed into something else, something big." "They're not just running a camp," Hunter said, his face grim. "Maybe they're running a factory, a lab, who knows what." As the rest of the team moved ahead, they stumbled upon something far more disturbing than a simple command center. In a series of large, hidden tents beyond the main house, they found re-education camps. Civilians, mostly local residents, were being processed, not through violence, but through a chilling form of psychological conditioning. Loudspeakers, powered by smaller generators, continuously blared a repetitive, soothing message about order, stability, and the benevolent guidance of the director. Food and water, scarce elsewhere, were being distributed here, creating a chilling illusion of safety and abundance. "They're consolidating power," Natasha whispered, her face grim as she observed the scene. "Offering basic needs in exchange for absolute obedience. This isn't just about destroying the old world, it's about building their own compliant society." Their mission had just gained a terrifying new dimension. The director wasn't just a terrorist, he was a self-proclaimed messiah, rebuilding humanity in his own image, one stabilization zone at a time. The team managed to place small, analog tracking devices, another Fitz innovation, on several of the Centipede trucks leaving the compound, hoping to trace their supply routes and other stabilization zones. They extracted silently, the cold reality of Centipede's true ambition settling upon them. "All right," May's voice cut through the silence, a low, authoritative command that snapped the team to attention. Objectives met. Wear wheels up. Well, on foot. It will be a long hike back to the hub. Hunter immediately spoke up. Permission to liberate a vehicle, ma'am? I spotted a couple of diesel pickups outside their command tent. Why walk when we can ride? Natasha shook her head. Too risky. We're in the clear now. We need to stay that way. A stolen centipede truck would be a big, loud signal that we were here. We have intel now. We need to get it back. And the best way to do that is quietly. Fair enough, Hunter conceded, though a mischievous glint remained in his eye. Maybe we'll get lucky and find one of those local gangs lounging about with a nice diesel pickup waiting to be pinched. May just gave him a look, a blend of exasperation and grudging amusement, before she turned and started walking. The team fell into formation behind her. The long hike ahead was a small price to pay for the terrifying knowledge they now carried.
The forest was a labyrinth of shadows, and every snap of a twig, every distant rustle of leaves sounded like a threat. May moved through it with a quiet, lethal grace, her mind replaying the mission, her body a coiled spring. She led the team, her boots silent on the damp earth, a ghost in the moonlit landscape. As the second day of hiking drew to a close, the cold reality of Centipede's true ambition was a heavy weight on their shoulders. The image of the blank-faced civilians, their minds being systematically eroded, haunted them. It was a new kind of terror, a silent, insidious war that they were only just beginning to understand. A few yards behind her, the soft, labored thud of Fitz's boots was a constant counterpoint to the team's professional silence. He was a scientist, not a field agent, and the long trek back to the hub was taking its toll. Natasha, sensing his struggle, dropped back to walk beside him. "Almost there, Fitz," she said, her voice a low, steady murmur. He looked up, his face pale with exhaustion. "Almost there, but the last mile is the longest," he muttered. Natasha offered a small, knowing smile. "It's the one you remember, though. The last push. It's how we know we've got what it takes." She watched him for a moment, an unreadable curiosity in her eyes. "You surprised everyone back there, including me. That last-minute identification of the additional generators as being used for a centipede command center? That was good work." Fitz's shoulders straightened a fraction. "Just being observant," he replied, a hint of pride in his voice. Natasha continued, "I've worked with the best. Gods, super soldiers. They get the job done with brute force. You get it done with a piece of wire and a screwdriver. For what it's worth, I'm impressed, Fitz." Her words seemed to give him a second wind. He pushed a little harder, matching her stride. Ahead, May glanced back, her eyes meeting Natasha's for a fleeting moment. A silent, mutual understanding passed between them. The mission was complete. They were bringing everyone home. All of them, especially the one who needed it most. Walker walked along with Hunter, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. The night air was thick with the scent of damp earth and tension. Local civilians were starting to get desperate, and a run-in with a gang of thugs was a risk they couldn't afford. After walking a few miles in silence, they were in an area that seemed clear of an immediate threat. Something had been on Casey's mind, and he took the opportunity to speak. "What you did back there, with the drone," Casey said, his voice a low rumble, "that was a hell of a move." Hunter grinned, a flash of white teeth in the dark. "Thanks. I've always been a fan of dramatic entrances." "It's not about the drama," Casey grunted. "I made a call, a hard one, and you got her out. You chose to prioritize the intel and Walker's life over my own. I get it. It was the right call, the only call, but I appreciate that you tried." Hunter's smile faded. "You're not the first field agent I've had to make a tough call on. It's the job, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't worry about you back there. You're a damn good operative, Casey. It's a shame we didn't send in more support. I was just the cavalry on a recon mission, not the whole damn army." Casey stopped walking, a rare thing for him, and looked at Hunter. "You saved her life, Hunter. That's all that matters. Thank you." The gratitude in Casey's voice was raw and genuine, a rare thing from the hardened colonel. Hunter looked away, a little uncomfortable with the praise. "Just doing my job, Colonel." And he started walking again. "But if you're ever in London, the first round is on me." Casey snorted, a hint of a smile on his face as he fell back into step. "Just don't try to give me any of that real ale, and I'll take you up on it." The hub in the distance, just a few lights appearing on the horizon, still running on generator power, a seemingly lone sentinel in the director's new world. The few lights near the gate, a small beacon of hope, a physical reminder that they were not alone. The generators hummed, a low, steady thrum that they could feel as much as hear, a sound that represented not just power, but purpose in a world gone dark. The sentries welcomed them through the gate with grim nods and serious faces. It had been a long, weary trek, but as they walked through the gate, the silent understanding between the agents was clear. They were returning to their home in this new world.
The gravity of their discoveries settled over the shield playground like a new, heavier darkness. The next morning, the emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows that mirrored the grim expressions on the agents' faces as the two teams, technical and tactical, converged in the main command center. Coulson listened intently as May and Natasha debriefed the full extent of the stabilization zones and the director's chilling strategy. Fitz sketched diagrams of the hardened radio towers and supply routes they'd observed at Albright's estate. Casey, ever stoic, laid out the details of Centipede's security shifts and reliance on older, more brutal methods. Next, Simmons, her voice buzzing with scientific urgency, outlined their initial findings from the Centipede core. Daisy described the resident layers of the EMP, and Sarah, her mind a living conduit of the toolbox's secrets, explained the concept of the recalibration pulse generator and the intricate multi-layered counterfrequencies. "So," Coulson summarized, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "The director isn't just turning off the lights, he's installing himself as the sole power provider. He's offering stability and resources to the terrified populace in exchange for absolute control. And he's using the EMP to weed out any opposition, any organization reliant on technology." He looked at his team, their faces illuminated by the dim lights. He means to build a new world order based on absolute subservience. The strategy quickly solidified, born of necessity and the dire circumstances. S.H.I.E.L.D. had to fight on two fronts. "The recalibration pulse generator is our ultimate goal," Coulson stated, turning to the technical team. "Simmons, Daisy, Sarah, and Bobby, you are the world's last hope for restoring power. The toolbox has given us the how, but the what and the where are still massive hurdles. You need to identify the optimal location for such a device, a place with enough ambient energy or raw materials to power a global counterpulse, and you need to design it using only the resources we have." Simmons nodded, already thinking out loud. A single, massive counterpulse. It would require an immense power source. Geothermal? Residual energy from a large-scale power plant, if we can find one that wasn't critically damaged? And the specific frequency modulation. It has to be precise. Daisy, your ability to sense the core's frequency will be our most vital calibration tool. Sarah, her mind already running through countless permutations, spoke up. "We might want to look at natural phenomenon, maybe a specific energy nexus that could amplify the pulse. It's vague, but if we can triangulate that with geographical data, it could give us our sight." Simmons and Bobby's heads nodded in agreement, whispering possible ideas frantically. Their task was monumental, reverse engineering a world-ending event with scraps and ingenuity, all while operating under constant threat. "While the technical team works on bringing the power back," Coulson continued, shifting his gaze to May's group,
Your mission, May, is to disrupt Centipede's stabilization zones. We can't let them consolidate their control. Every one of those zones they establish is a foothold in their new world order. We traced Albright's supply trucks, Fitz announced, pointing to a rough hand-drawn map. They're heading towards a major distribution center near Philadelphia. It appears to be a repurposed, abandoned factory complex. That would be their next major consolidation point. Philadelphia, Natasha murmured, a major population center. They'll be looking to bring a lot of people under their thumb there. Your objectives, Coulson laid out clearly, are to infiltrate these zones, gather more intelligence on their leadership, resources, and expansion plans. But critically, you need to disrupt their supply chains and their psychological conditioning. Show the populace that the director's stability comes at a terrifying cost. Undermine their authority, create chaos in their order. Casey, ever direct, pulled out a thick, rusty wrench. So we smash their generators, then? Ideally, May replied, a rare, grim smile touching her lips. But remember, they're not just relying on brute force anymore. They're leveraging fear and dependency. Our targets aren't just buildings. They're the foundations of their new society. Hunter, looking at the map, thought of his last encounter with Wraith. They'll be heavily guarded. They'll have learned from our last encounter. Good, Coulson said, his gaze hard. So have we. We're fighting a two-front war against an enemy who thinks he's already won. We show them they're wrong. The playground, once a symbol of advanced technology, was now a hardened base of operations in a silent new world. The missions were clear, the stakes global. The director had made his move, and now S.H.I.E.L.D. was ready to counter. The battle for the future had truly begun. The playground hummed with the strained energy of a command center pushed to its limits. Coulson had just finalized the assignments, the strategic clarity a stark contrast to the global chaos outside. In the dimly lit main lab, Simmons, Daisy, and Sarah were already deep into their work, hunched over their growing collection of analog instruments, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of the centipede core. Coulson approached, a slight shift in his posture. Simmons, after reviewing the initial reports from the tactical team, I've made a slight adjustment to the groups. We need every engineering mind focused on the counterpulse. He looked towards Fitz, who had just entered carrying a box of what looked like salvaged radio parts. Fitz, you're officially back with the techies. We need your mechanical and problem-solving skills here. Just as Coulson was leaving, Daisy asked, have we heard from any other S.H.I.E.L.D. teams? I'm wondering how Mac and Yo-Yo are. Coulson stopped and turned to Daisy, noting her concern. Nothing definitive, Daisy. We've had a few burst transmissions, mostly static. We know they're in the Appalachian region, but anything more specific than that is a guess. Agent Davies, who had been meticulously working on a large circuit board with a soldering iron, paused and looked up. Agent Johnson, even with the old radio sets we've managed to get running, like Fitz's short-range comms units, we're still working in the dark, bouncing signals off a dead sky. We have no idea if Mac's team was able to do the same thing, or if they even have the components to do it. For all we know, they're running on tin cans and string. Which means they're off the grid. Coulson finished, finally looking at Daisy, his expression weary. I know. But Mac is a seasoned operative. He knows how to go dark and stay dark. We just have to trust that he's doing what he does best, surviving. And we need to focus on our end of the problem here, so when we can talk to him again, we have a solution instead of just more questions. He then returned to his map, the light from the lantern casting long shadows across his face. Oh, and, he turned to the rest of the group, we need that counterpulse yesterday. Fitz's face lit up, a genuine smile replacing his earlier apprehension. Right, sir, on it. I've been thinking about the power transfer, and I believe I might have a way to adapt an old steam generator to push the necessary voltage for the core's resonance. He was already rambling, his enthusiasm infectious. Simmons smiled, a look of relief and familiarity passing between them. Excellent, Fitz. We were just discussing the complexities of the resonant frequency. How can we develop the kinetic energy transfer? Both instantly feeding off each other's intensity. Sarah watched their easy camaraderie, a stark contrast to her own solitary struggle with the intersect. She suddenly, drastically missed Chuck. Daisy, sensing Sarah's internal world, gave her a small, encouraging nod. The new lineup meant more minds focused on the impossible, and with Fitz's practical engineering brilliance added to Simmons's theoretical understanding, Daisy's vibrational sensitivity, and Sarah's seemingly inhuman knack for data synthesis, the daunting task suddenly felt a fraction less impossible. Then, Coulson moved to the makeshift briefing room where May's team was recalibrating. Bobby Morse had joined May, Natasha, Casey, and Hunter, her usual stoicism a little more pronounced. "All right, May," Coulson began, addressing the shift. "Now that Agent Morse has a deeper understanding of the theory behind the EMP, she'll be even more useful in the field. She'll be joining your team for the Philadelphia operation." Bobby nodded crisply, her gaze settling briefly on Hunter, a flicker of that familiar, tumultuous tension passing between them. Hunter, for his part, offered a barely perceptible raise of his eyebrow, a silent challenge that Bobby just couldn't refuse. "Just try to keep up, Hunter," Bobby said, her voice dry, already reviewing the map of Philadelphia with Natasha. "Always do, love," Hunter drawled, a smirk playing on his lips, knowing full well how much that term of endearment annoyed her. The banter was sharp, a familiar dance of old wounds and grudging respect. May and Natasha exchanged a glance, already used to the dynamic. Casey, ever observant, saw the flicker in Bobby's eyes, the way her shoulders stiffened slightly. He then caught Hunter's almost imperceptible smirk. He sighed inwardly. More baggage. "All right, the Philadelphia zone," May stated, cutting through the lingering tension. "Natasha and Bobby, you'll focus on infiltrating the main complex and confirming the director's presence or key lieutenants. Casey, Hunter, you'll be on disruption and recon, targeting their fuel supplies and communication playgrounds. Fitz designed some excellent incendiaries we'll be taking." Casey grunted. He found a strange, unspoken kinship with May. Her quiet competence, her utter lack of pretense resonated with his own no-nonsense approach. They were both veterans, seeing the world with clear, unsentimental eyes. He felt a quiet respect for her strategic mind and calm demeanor in the face of impossible odds. As he packed his gear, he felt a flicker of grim satisfaction. He was back in the field with people who understood the cold, hard realities.
She's got style to find.